What's going on, guys? So my wife and I, we were discussing certain things around cost of living, expenses, what the expectations or different milestones that you are expected to achieve in life in America were, are, I guess, if it still holds weight. We were talking about that stuff yesterday a bit. And what this American dream looks like. What does it consist of? And we've been always told, I won't say taught, but told, showed, exemplified that the American dream was something that's sustainable, was something that was achievable, was something that anybody can get if they put their head down and worked hard, especially in the country of the free. The American dream consisted of, being, one with a partner, as far as marriage, a sign of commitment with marriage. I think the premise of the whole American dream was being committed to a system where if you follow these steps, you'll be pretty successful throughout the entirety of your life, right? That's finding a partner, getting married, having children. I don't know if you guys heard the term of the cliche 2.5 kids, right? A dog and a picket fence, right? Picket fence would essentially symbolize buying a home. Today that could be just acquiring property or real estate. That could be more of an investment rather than a default and primary residence. But owning a home rather than renting or leasing, right? One of the most prominent assets in your life, outside the value of you going to work, right? Holding a job, climbing the corporate ladder, ultimately working to retirement, having a 401k, SSI, and if you were lucky to have a pension altogether. That would sound great. You're married 30, 40 years, you retire from your job, still married, you retire from your job, married, and your kids are successfully out the house. You bought a home when you were in your 20s, if not late teens for some people, and now you don't have a mortgage up until retirement, if not before you even retired, and you have now three streams of income. You had your 401k, which a lot of times came with a contribution. You had an SSI that was well intact, and you had a pension in some companies outside of just the military, police force, right? Pensions was allocated to people who stayed on the job. You weren't job hopping, right? You stayed on the job, you stayed employed. Whether you were able to climb the corporate ladder, you were able to maintain sufficient income. You weren't scrambling for work, right? That was the American dream, probably up until the early 2000s, right? Way before, maybe 5, 6, 7 years before that first kind of economic bust. That essentially is what the American dream looked like for, 70, 80 years. Kind of the post, industrial revolution. That's kind of what it looked like. And that American dream kind of orchestrated itself towards a massive demographics. It wasn't just to white Americans. You were able to be a minority and to be able to participate in being part of this dream, quote unquote, with different type of, what do you call it, like not aids, but different type of programs, and obviously you got different type of mortgage companies just because of that, right? Or lending companies, right? You got Sallie Mae, what is it? And that's also Sallie Mae, with the whole student loans, right? Being able to go to school and get educated, right? You know, have a secondary education was part of that American dream, to be able to, you know, catapult you into a long-term successful career. That was all part of the American dream. And the social media era, I would say, right, in the last 20 years, I would say 2004, 2005, YouTube was coming out. So I would say the last 15 to 20 years, this whole social media era, right, which is funny, it's synonymous to the economic bust in 08, 09, right? So like, I remember, you know, getting my first iPhone. I didn't hear about Instagram till 2010. You know, Facebook was 04, 05, right? It was kind of phasing in while MySpace was phasing out. You know, you had different streaming services coming out in 09, 010. Spotify was so not prevalent, you know, like, it's crazy. In 09, 010. So a lot of stuff spurred, man, while I was still you know, entering high school, late middle school. Like, a lot of stuff kind of was just coming to fruition. And now you got, you know, you're not even 20 years later, and you're in this whole different lifestyle. And it's like, I've been seeing what people are saying, right? I've been seeing what people are saying. I've been seeing what people are going through, right? Outside looking in, inside talking out, right? I've been seeing what people are gathering about this life in America, and the new dream of being American. For some, I'm gonna split it into two. This is my little spin on it. Is basically just staying afloat, or figuring it out somewhere else, right? Being displaced outside of America to acquire not 100% of what that American dream curtailed to, right? You know, going into the late 90s, very early 2000s, right? But trying to get some of those milestones, accomplishments, achievements done in other places outside the US. Either one of the two, you know, that's the new American dream, is just staying afloat. I was telling my boy, you're lucky to have a job. Like, to have a job, man, like, is a blessing. It's not by default. You know, I was looking at a video and an article talking about what Gen Z's, you know, people graduating college with, again, this is part of the American dream, right? So see how institutions haven't changed, right? The way and the system of learning and adapting haven't changed. Why? Because they still got to make money. You know, these companies, like these hedge funds, these sponsors, these shareholders who fund these schools, you know, like, they know what they're doing. They have an understanding that this isn't the way to go anymore. And so many people going to Ivy League schools, going to Power 5 schools, going to, you know, prominent HBCUs, getting IT degrees, you know, getting business degrees, different, you know, different tiered education, and not only can hold a job, but can get a job. It's not happening. Therefore, it's putting off marriage, because it's hard to, right? There's a lot of people who believe in marriage and believe in having kids while they're married. So it's putting off building a family. It's putting off buying a house. Why? Because I could just rent if I'm a single person, right? It's putting off all this stuff. And that leads us into the turmoil of not being able to successfully pivot in each phase of our life, right? Getting to retirement. It's just this circle of events, right? I.e. the rat race. So, you know, you can sense the cheese. The cheese is out there for those who can pivot the best, those who can maneuver the best, but it's not aligned for most people, you know, following that that path, you know, that laid out path. The path isn't easy. It's too easy to do that. It's easy to go to college, get a loan, get a degree, get a job. It's easy to do all that, but the system isn't easy anymore. This divide is happening immensely. And so, you know, I'm seeing people, you know, which I agree to most of it. I agree to most of it, to where this American dream or concept of being able to provide for your family, lay a foundation. If you are, what do you call that word? Impactful enough, or transcending enough, you know, laying that, providing a legacy, you know, like if you're doing all that right, like you know, the American dream was iconic for all that. That's not the case. People just want to survive. There's some people who's told me they will never retire just because they're used to it. They're just used to working. You know, kids are out the home, could have a decent savings, right? Things could be paid off. These are people who just who can't see another way, desensitized, right? So, you know, the American dream is keeping people stuck, the idea of it. So now people are trying to return. That's why, you know, slang happens, right? Things get played out, and, you know, you got to kind of reinvent the wheel. So, like, you know, we like the concept, we like the idea of an American dream, but it can't happen in America, is what a lot of people are saying, right? A lot of people working remote, retired, living off an SSI, 401k, a stock portfolio, pension if they're lucky, with a lot of people who's in the military, late 30s, early 40s, who can retire early, successfully can displace themselves outside the US and retire pretty well, and fully retire, you know. So a lot of people are migrating out of the US to sustain this quote-unquote American dream that is not sustainable in America, right? You know, so obviously I look at American dream as quality of life, right? How can we make our life not just last, but how can we make it better? You know, how can we make it better? And again, you know, I applaud people. I mean, I agree with most of it. Obviously, you know, there's 190 other countries out there. Make it shake somewhere else, especially with the ability, the opportunity. Being from America, you can take that course. You can go the extra mile, literally, like not figuratively, just literally. You know, just being based out of America, doing some decent things, right? Having an okay savings, having passive income to establish the American dream outside of America. It's crazy how things are kind of turning. It's crazy how life is just shifting in different directions just in front of us. Like, it's just, you know, we're just getting more open to it, you know, to where certain, like, there's certain things that have to be checked off. This is not even a bucket list. This is just for a complete sense of comfort, of content living. Certain things must happen, whether you stay in America or not. Certain things must happen in your life. That's just where we're at today. So I just think that's interesting. You know, as being a kid, hearing that, the American dream, like, it's like, you know, why is it even a dream? You know, like, why isn't it the way? Why is it not the American way? You know, why are we dreaming about such and such? And I get it, you know, you have to kind of sow your oats, do some time, put them 10 years, put them 20 years, 30 years in. Then you could wake up and actually not dream anymore. But people are waking up and finding out that the dream was never applicable to them, in a sense where they've done exactly what they needed to do, and they can't achieve it. So, you know, it's interesting, man. It's just interesting how, you know, higher learning doesn't entail being adaptable in a changing economy. Going to school, doing a trade, it doesn't curtail knowing how to maneuver in life. It just doesn't. And that kind of what pisses me off about school, and how I wish I would have done things a little bit differently. But hey, you know, things happen. We get here. You know, I got here by, you know, off of good and bad direction. You know, so luckily I'm alive. I'm maneuvering because it's been more good than bad. But it's like, man, you know, I know there's really not such thing. There's no such thing as a roadmap anymore. But you know, I'm wishing and I'm hoping to see this for people who are even younger than me. Of course, I'm hoping to see it for, you know, peers of my kids. You know, the peers that my kids will be around, like people exemplifying what, you know, actually being street smart mean. Like being street smart, you know, should be world smart. Like how do we really maneuver in this world? You know, people aren't abreast of that. How do we really like make it happen faster without doing anything illegal, without doing anything that's, you know, extremely expensive? Like how do we just keep pivoting these different towards different kind of phase gates in our life? You know, how do we do that stuff? So let me know your thoughts. You know, this American dream, you know, are you dreaming? Are you putting into what you want into reality? You know, you gotta stop. People gotta stop waiting on other people, trying to figure it out. People move and they do things because their parents told them to. I can't believe. Look. I would not imagine. I could not imagine my parents telling me to do one thing and I followed it. Like I've seen examples of why certain things don't work. Why would I? It's insanity to me. It's insanity. I can't keep doing something. Even if there's a small little detour, I'm going in the same direction. I can't go in the same direction. You know, I wouldn't be here making these YouTube videos. I went in the same direction. Like I wouldn't be, you know, like talking about trying to migrate out of the U.S. Not trying to, but about to migrate out of the U.S. Like there wouldn't be certain things I was able to do and accomplish because I just was listening to traditions, listening to different sects, different groups, you know, people who are just older, who you would assume is doing the right thing or who knows more. You know, it doesn't matter. Wisdom, experience, advice, you know, like, you know, it doesn't play on a specific demographic. It doesn't play on a specific, you know, culture, I don't know, class of people. You know, you got to figure it out. You just got to figure it out. Just read between the lines, take a step back, look at what people are doing and not doing for yourself, and kind of create your own formula and create your own path. And to this day, I still don't have a complete path because it's forever changing. But the goal is to keep excelling and at least preparing your mind to excel so you can get to that self-actualization point as early as possible in your life. You know, so something to sip on, man. The American dream, is it still in America or is it outside of it? There's different people who are leaving America to find that out. There's people who are staying and saying, I'm content and I'm good here. So get your own roots started and figure it out on your own. You know what I'm saying?